Hey there, Elizabeth Hines here from our Paleo Family and the Autoimmune Free Cooking Club. Welcome back to my kitchen. So, I don't know if it was the last video we put up, but it will have been one of the most recent. Broccoli, chicken, and rice casserole. I just did it in a 9x13 and we baked it in the oven. Well, I'm doing the exact same recipe, but in the Instant Pot. And I'll tell you, honestly, I tried to have it for you in the Instant Pot originally, and it would not work. It kept sticking, and it wouldn't seal or pressurize, and then there was a huge mess in my Instant Pot, and it wasn't cooking, and I ended up having to make it in the oven anyway. It was just a big mess, but I think we've got it worked out now. This is a great recipe, and I'll tell you, I originally did it in the casserole in the oven because it was a Thanksgiving recipe request. And here we are in February, maybe March by the time you see this. And so you're probably, Thanksgiving is probably the furthest thing from your mind. But why not have typical Thanksgiving food throughout the year? This doesn't have to be something unhealthy. In fact, this is pretty darn healthy. We have paleo-fied this recipe or primal-fied it because I'm going to use some cheese. You absolutely don't have to use the cheese. I'll tell you how to avoid that. But so we've taken that traditional broccoli and rice and cheese casserole out of chicken to make it a one-pot meal, and taken out the inflammatory stuff to make it really healthy and fit with our anti-inflammatory diet. So there are a couple changes from the original. Actually, I think in terms of the ingredients, there's only one, and that is that I added some red bell pepper. So in my Instant Pot, I've done the first step, which before I showed you I did it on my burner in a skillet. 1 tablespoon of either a cooking oil like coconut oil, avocado oil, bacon drippings, from your healthy bacon, that kind of thing. In my case, I've used grass-fed butter. That works great for us. I'm going to turn this back up. I'm going to have one saute, and I'm going to put it back on more. So I had that tablespoon of butter, a small sweet organic onion, and then a couple stalks of celery, and I've added a red bell pepper just because, 1, flavor, 2, another vegetable, a different color, it brings different nutrients with it, and it's just pretty, and if you wanted to have this for holiday, this definitely looks Christmassy with the red and green. You can use any color bell pepper you like. You could not use a bell pepper, but it's really delicious in this. So I've had that sauteing for about 10 minutes, maybe 15, as I was getting everything else ready. This recipe has 2 teaspoons to 2.5 teaspoons of salt, and I put a whole teaspoon in with my vegetables just to get them cooking and start pulling the moisture out of them. And that has been cooking while I was prepping everything else. And in my bowl I have boneless, skinless chicken breast that I have just chopped up into about 1-inch cubes, kind of bite-sized pieces. And this is about 1.5 pounds. It was just one of the packages from Costco, and so sometimes they're pounds, sometimes they're close to 2 pounds. This one was just about 1.5 pounds. And I'm going to toss this in with my vegetables and just get that cooking a little bit. While I mix up the liquid. So this is one of the differences from the oven version. So with the oven version, I had my great big mixing bowl, and literally everything went in. I mixed it up, put it in the baking dish, and put it in the oven. So here I'm using the saute function on my Instant Pot to saute, to cook some of my stuff, and I'm going to just mix up my liquids here. So I have a can of full-fat coconut milk. If you're someone who is not eating dairy, you can use coconut milk or almond milk. Those would be my preferences, but you could also use, there are all kinds of different nut milks on the market now. There's macadamia nut milk, cashew milk. Cashews are a little bit in a different category, and they're pretty inflammatory to some people and to a lot of people in higher quantities. So you might want to steer clear of cashews unless that's all you have, all that works for you, that sort of thing. That's kind of unusual. I would be surprised if anybody said, oh, all I have is cashew milk. So just 1 can of 15 ounces, I think. Oh, sorry, 13 ounces. This is Native Forest. This is the simple one with no guar. It's just a coconut and water. Um, and it's a good one. I get that from Thrive Market. So that's our liquid plus a half a cup of chicken broth. If you watched the other video, I made a mistake. I put in 2 cups of broth and I had to start over. So we're going to end up deglazing our pan with this liquid. So our dairy-free alternatives here. Coconut milk or almond milk for the bulk of the liquid. That's it. And then the cheese. So the cheese is just for flavor. It doesn't make the recipe work or not work. But I recognize that this was a very cheese-filled recipe originally with that big block of orange stuff. You know what I mean? That processed cheese food. So the dairy is obviously traditional in the recipe. Instead of using that processed cheese food, I'm using a grass-fed cheddar, which usually I use a white grass-fed cheddar. But this is one of my very favorite ones. They have it sometimes at Whole Foods. It's called a New Zealand red grass-fed cheddar, and it has a great flavor. So I have some of that, and then I have some Parmesan. So if you have tried dairy and you're like, oh, you know, I can't eat mozzarella, or maybe I can't eat brie, try cheddar. Try some of the aged cheeses. They are typically easier on the digestive system. So if you're just trying to incorporate some dairy, definitely go with grass-fed. Grass-fed is going to be organic, so if you can't find grass-fed, at least get organic, and go with some of the harder, more aged cheeses. So I'm ready to get going and get this all cooking. So I'm going to kind of do similarly to what I did with my casserole, and that is just to throw everything in, except my rice and my cheese. So we'll talk about that in a minute. So this is 2 cups of cauliflower rice. You could use all cauliflower rice. My family is very easily tricked, and they would much rather have regular rice than cauliflower rice. So I have found that if I use mostly cauliflower and a little bit of regular, they're happy little clams. I like to use frozen broccoli florets in this recipe. It's just easier. I wrote my recipe for a 1-pound bag because that's what I had found at every store until this past weekend. This particular store had 12-ounce bags, which is 3/4 of a pound. The first time I made it, this recipe, I put in 2 pounds of broccoli, and that was too much. And then I used just the 1 pound. It was perfect. It was like Goldilocks, right? So I am going to put in just a little bit of this one, about 1/4. I'm going to try to use just 1/4 and throw it all over the kitchen at the same time. Get this stirred around. And I'm also going to put in my arrowroot. This is going to thicken it and make it have that nice, help it to have the nice creamy texture. I also need another teaspoon of salt and just another sprinkling of pepper. You could absolutely not put the chicken in and still use this like a side dish. I know that I wanted closer to the 2.5, so I'm going to put extra in. You could grill your chicken or cook some other meat, whatever. But I love a one-pot dish. Obviously, if you were making this for Thanksgiving, you probably had your turkey in the oven. And you could do your broccoli and rice in here. And so you probably wouldn't want to, that's what I'm trying to say. If you were making this at Thanksgiving, you'd probably have turkey, so you wouldn't be putting chicken in this. It would still work just fine. So I just want to stir all this together. Part of my problem before when I was making this, I'll just kind of work through it with you in case you have some problems with your Instant Pot. I mixed the arrowroot in with my liquid, and I think it sort of settled on the bottom of my pot and made a film across, and then it was not sealing. Many times I have done something like this where I've been sauteing my meat and vegetables, and then I've sprinkled my arrowroot in, and I've really stirred it up and distributed it around, and I've not had any trouble with it not sealing. So I think that was part of my problem. I'm going to hold off on the cheese. That's going to go in at the end, like once it's cooked, actually. So I'm going to turn this off. I want saute off. Can't you see how pretty that is already? I'm going to just use my spatula and kind of wipe that down so everything is down there happily together. I'm going to pour in all that liquid. Don't let me forget to talk to you about this. Don't let me forget. You can remind me, right? I can tell that my pan is deglazed by putting in my frozen cauliflower and broccoli. Enough moisture came off of that deglazed my pan, but I just want to make sure that I don't have the bottom of my pan covered with fond. And then here's the trick with the rice, what I found. I've watched a lot of other videos and other people did not have this trouble with their rice, but whenever I stirred my rice in, it did not cook. It settled on the bottom of my pot, it stuck, and it did not seal. So I just sprinkle it on, and I just kind of press it so it is down in the liquid, but I'm not stirring it. I don't want it to settle to the bottom. I just want it all in the liquid, just sitting right there on top. It's perfect. I'm going to put my pot on. My gasket is in there. Seal that, move my valve over to sealing. And then I want high pressure, so I'm doing manual. It's on high pressure, 10 minutes. 10 minutes is the right amount of time for the chicken, and it's the right amount of time for the rice. And the vegetables could be done in just a couple minutes, so they're definitely done. So when that finishes cooking, I'll let the pressure come down naturally for a few minutes, and then I will open it, and I will sprinkle on, I may not do all of this cheese, but I will sprinkle on some of my cheese, and we'll have our delicious casserole. Now, if you are avoiding dairy, something you can add to get that cheesy flavor is nutritional yeast. And if you've never seen it, it's this real golden yellow powder. It smells to me like popcorn. Some people say it smells nutty. I think it has more of a nutty flavor, but it definitely to me smells like popcorn. And it does have a cheesy flavor, sort of a cheesy essence to it. And in this recipe, I would use about half a cup actually. And I would do the same thing as with my rice. I would put the nutritional yeast in first, just sprinkle it on, then sprinkle on the rice and just sort of lightly press it down rather than stirring it in. And once it's cooked, once your cooking time has finished, then you can stir it all together. And, you know, obviously it's cooking, it's inside the pot, it's cooking. But I find that this sticks to the bottom of the pot, which obviously is not ideal. So, fingers crossed, it's going to seal. I'm sure it is. I'll have a finished product to show you in just a few minutes. But I just want to say thank you for watching. We are over 6,000 subscribers, which is just unbelievable to me. I'm super excited about that. I know you're excited about using your Instant Pot and learning a bunch of great recipes. I know some of you are here because of the paleo or the anti-inflammatory nature of the recipes. And some of you are getting that as a side effect. You came for the Instant Pot and you're getting the paleo. And I'm super excited about that because that honestly is my mission in life, is to share with people how you can manage your disease with diet and lifestyle. If you don't want to listen, you can just stop right now and you can come back and see the finished product. But I know I have a ton of new subscribers, and I just want to really briefly say my story is that I suffered from undiagnosed Crohn's disease, which is an autoimmune disease that affects the gut, for a very, very, very long time. I was very, very, very sick, and I went to all the doctors and I had all the tests imaginable, and they could not figure out what was wrong with me. I had a very unusual case of the disease. I did not have the typical symptoms. I had a lot of abdominal pain. I was miserable. And if somebody had told me then what I know now, that I could not eat gluten, I could eat, you know, occasionally dairy, lots of fresh fruits and vegetables, basically no grain. You know, here I have a little bit of white rice, but I've been living this lifestyle for 10 years, you know. And I could feel well, I would have done it in a heartbeat, but I didn't know. Nobody told me. Nobody that I knew about paleo or functional medicine. And so I know you all don't want to hear this, but I'm going to tell you all because if one person's life is changed by me sharing that you can change the way you eat and you can really change your health, then it's worth it to me. It's worth it to irritate the rest of you, and it's just worth it for me to take the time to say it, because I know what it's like to be miserable. I know what it's like to feel hopeless, helpless, that nobody knows what's wrong with you. They probably are telling you it's all in your mind. It's not in your mind. You know, your symptoms are real, and I get it, and that really stinks. And I'm walking proof that you can have a really serious disease and live a really great symptom-free life if you make some lifestyle changes. So that's my story in a very small nutshell. I'm glad you're here, whether it's just for the Instant Pot or it's the paleo stuff or all of it together, or just because you like to see my smiling face. I'm happy that you're here. Please ask me any questions you'd like. In fact, I was thinking about doing a Q&A sometime. I've seen other YouTubers do that, and that's really fun, where people just say, like, how'd you meet your husband? Where were you born? Where'd you go to college? You know, that kind of stuff. So if you have questions you'd like me to answer, just put them down in the comments, and if I get enough, we'll do a whole Q&A video. All right, so let me clean up while this cooks, and I'll see you back here in just a second. Okay, we're back. So it took a few minutes, about 5, for the pressure to come up, so for the pot to seal. Then I cooked it for the 10 minutes, and you can see I've let the pressure come down naturally for about 10 minutes. I didn't need to do that, but I was busy with other stuff, and so it was fine. Then I quick released the rest of the pressure. And I want to just show you what it looks like. So when you first take the lid off, it's going to look like, oh, you know, there's all this liquid on top, but it's just right there on top. So remember, this inner pot is not hot when you're sauteing and everything, but once it's been under pressure, it is hot. So we'll just give it a stir. Nice and creamy and delicious. I'm going to stir in that Parmesan. I'm just about a third, maybe a quarter of a cup. It's on keep warm. It's plenty hot. By the way, thank you all for your nice comments. You know, I do wish that people would read some previous comments, because I think I've gotten like 150 comments on that original pot roast video that says, you shouldn't quick release your meat. Thank you. I learned it a few years ago. So just take a second and read a couple other comments and see if your suggestion is already there. That would be great. And you know, that just keeps it kind of neat and tidy for everybody, so we don't have a whole bunch of the same comment. And another one I hear a lot is, you know, you can store your lid in these handles. Yes, you know, I've shown you that before. My Instant Pot beginner video, I talked about that. This particular model has the little tabs on the handle, so it fits right in here. I don't do that on the video because I feel like it gets in the way of you seeing what's going on. So I intentionally do not put it on here for my videos. But like after we wash the pot, we'll store the lid that way on the counter till it completely dries out, and then I'll turn the lid upside down and set it on there to store it. I'm going to give it a taste just for seasoning, and then I'm going to sprinkle some of that cheese on the top just because that will be pretty. So it worked great. You know, I told you I had tried before and it kept, something was sticking. So I tried with the nutritional yeast, all stirred in, it stuck badly. I tried it without the nutritional yeast, but just everything else, and I had mixed the arrowroot into the liquid, and that seemed to settle on the bottom and stick. So mixing the arrowroot into the dry ingredients, then adding the liquid in, not stirring in the rice, definitely stirring in the rice seemed to make it stick. Just putting it on top and kind of pressing it down, and I didn't have any problem. It's really good. I love the bell pepper in there because it's really pretty. So I'm just going to sprinkle some of this cheese on top. Well, you know what? I have it all shredded. It was just about a cup shredded. My recipe calls for 8 ounces, but you don't have to use the full 8 ounces. If I had my lid still sitting here, I put my lid back on. I put my lid in the sink. I'm just going to kind of press it down, and it'll melt in there. But that's it. So the first video, making it in the oven, it had to bake for about an hour. It was real fast to mix up and put together, like 15 minutes max, because we had to cook the onions and celery. And while that was sauteing, I just mixed everything else up. But it did have to bake for about an hour with the uncooked rice in it, which is great for Thanksgiving. You got a whole bunch of casseroles going in the oven. You know, everything's baking all day anyway. No problem. But if you want the same recipe, but a little bit faster, and you have an Instant Pot, you can do it in about half the time. So the prep time, the pressure time, all in all, you're talking a max of 30 minutes with this particular version. So I hope you enjoyed this recipe. If you have not already subscribed, consider subscribing, liking, hit that little bell. The bell just gives you a notification when I have published a new video, and also if I go live, which I try to go live once a month, and we try to publish a recipe every Wednesday. Not always, nobody's perfect, but that's always our plan. But if you hit that little bell, you will get notified when one of those great things is happening. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for leaving comments. I love to hear from you. Just hear who you are while you're here. Just introduce yourself. So thanks a lot, everybody, and I look forward to seeing you back here in the kitchen next time.